Okay, so believe it or not, I actually talk people out of moving to Washington State all the time. And that might sound a little bit strange coming from a real estate broker who lives here and works here, but it's actually true, I promise you, because people are constantly reaching out to us because they have fallen in love with the idea of Washington State, because they've seen these beautiful videos of forests or a misty morning with ferry boats on the water or stunning shots of Mount Baker or Mount Rainier, and they completely understandably fall in love with this state. But for many people, the actual reality of living here day in and day out is extremely different from the fantasy. And that disconnect is what causes people to leave here just as quickly as they arrived. And it even causes many born and raised Washingtonians to eventually leave here also. So I'm real estate broker Leah Courage, and my husband John and I run a team that sold about $250 million worth of real estate here in Washington. But today, ironically enough, I am not here to sell you on the dream. It's quite the opposite. I'm actually here to give you the reality check about Washington that most real estate agents won't, and that everyone, and I mean everyone, wishes they had gotten before moving here in the first place. So these are the 10 biggest negatives about Western Washington based on real migration trends and actual real feedback that we have received throughout our career. And I also want you to stay until the very end, because after we walk through the negatives, I am going to explain what makes Washington truly special, why people do stay here, and how to know whether the trade-offs are actually worth it for you. So the first and the biggest negative is what locals call the big dark, and it cannot truly be overstated how much this affects people. So most newcomers assume that the challenge of Washington State weather, because they've seen it in movies and TV shows, is the rain, but the rain is actually not the real issue. The issue is the absence of light in the wintertime. So from roughly November through February, the sun rises really late in the day, often around 8 in the morning, and in the depth of winter, the sun also sets shockingly early, sometimes as early as 4:15 in the afternoon. And even during those daylight hours, the sky is usually covered by a thick layer of gray stratus clouds that can stick around for weeks at a time. You can actually go days and sometimes weeks without seeing the sun directly. And trust me, it can be absolutely brutal. This isn't just inconvenient or gloomy. It's, for most people, really kind of destabilizing for a couple months. Seasonal affective disorder is extremely common here, especially among transplants. And vitamin D supplements and light therapy lamps aren't just trends, they're actual literal survival tools here in Western Washington. So for some people, even with coping strategies in place, the psychological weight of months and months without real sunlight just becomes too heavy. Now, the flip side to that is that the late springs, the summers, and falls here in Washington State are some of the best and most beautiful seasons anywhere in the United States. The summers are stunningly beautiful and warm without being too hot, and we have low humidity and almost no bugs here. So that is the major upside. But the sacrifice of full-time living here absolutely is the winters. If your mood or energy or your sense of motivation is closely tied to the sunshine, then winters here can be enough to make Western Washington unlivable. The second very big negative is the ever-increasing high cost of living here, and not just housing. People come prepared for expensive rent or home prices here, especially around Seattle, but they're blindsided by the everyday costs that chip away at their income. Washington has no state income tax for now, but the state actually compensates with some of the highest gas taxes in the country and high sales taxes that also often exceed 10% in cities, and super hefty vehicle registration fees. Dining out here is very expensive, and services are expensive, and even small indulgences tend to add up very quickly. A tech salary that looks really generous on an offer letter can actually feel surprisingly tight once you're paying $5 a gallon for gas, $15 to $20 for a sandwich, and premium prices for almost everything else. So for many people, the math simply doesn't work the way that they expected it to, and the financial pressure becomes a constant background stress, totally understandably. Before we move on, let me pause for just a second, because if you're finding this helpful, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we are putting out more and more long-form, honest guides like this one about all things life and housing and relocation throughout Washington state. And subscribing just makes sure that you don't miss them. And if you're seriously thinking about a move anywhere, whether that's Washington or otherwise, we want to talk through your specific situation. So click the link in the description below to get started. You don't have to have all the answers right now. That is what the conversation with us is for. All right, let's keep going. The third negative is the infamous Seattle freeze, which, to be clear, definitely extends past Seattle, and it is in all of Western Washington from my personal lived experience. And it's one of the most misunderstood aspects of living here. So people in Western Washington are generally polite and considerate and respectful. They will give you directions, they'll smile, they'll even hold doors open for you. But politeness is not the same as warmth, and friendliness does not come easily or quickly here, generally speaking. Casual invitations are often just that. They're polite gestures rather than genuine plans. And building real friendships here also tends to take time and effort, often years rather than months. So for people from warmer, more socially open and friendly cultures, this can feel pretty isolating and even painful. Extroverts especially often struggle with the pretty slow pace of social connection that we have here. It's not uncommon also for newcomers to say that they've lived here for 2 or 3 years before they truly felt like they had a community. So if you need frequent social interactions and easy friendships in order to feel grounded, this cultural dynamic that we have here in Washington can definitely be a major challenge. The fourth negative, let me tell you, is traffic along the I-5 corridor, which is largely dictated by geography, because Western Washington is squeezed between the Puget Sound on one side and the Cascade Mountains on the other side, leaving I-5 or Interstate 5 as the primary north-south artery. There are very few alternate routes, which means when I-5 backs up, you're stuck. So a commute that looks short on a map can easily turn into a 90-minute ordeal or even more. And this congestion isn't limited to traditional rush hours, unfortunately, which also seem to be getting longer and longer with every single passing day. You'll find accidents and construction, and the sheer volume of people on the road can cause delays at almost any time of the day, especially around Tacoma, Seattle, definitely Everett, for sure, Olympia. So unless you live very close to work or you're near expanding light rail lines, your car becomes a necessity and traffic becomes a daily quality of life issue rather than an occasional inconvenience. And separate from the traffic itself, a lot of newcomers are surprised by how aggressive drivers can be in Western Washington, especially on major interstates. Merging lanes can feel pretty competitive, and patience is worn super thin, and people can just be rude or just plain oblivious on the roads. And the overall driving culture often feels a lot more intense than people expect before they move here. The fifth negative is smoke season, which unfortunately has become a new reality. So summer in Western Washington used to be our secret weapon. We have mild temperatures, we have low humidity, we've got super long days, stunning scenery, incredible hiking and boating opportunities, and the list goes on and on. But in a lot of recent years, wildfire smoke from the Cascade Mountains, British Columbia, and down in Oregon has actually created what many locals now call a fifth season, fire season. So August and September can actually bring weeks of poor air quality, which sometimes even reaches level that makes being outside in any capacity unsafe. This is particularly hard because it often coincides with the best weather of the year. So after enduring months and months of gray, people finally get sunshine in July, only to be trapped indoors due to hazardous air in August and for part of September. So for our poor dogs and cats, also along with anyone that has asthma or respiratory issues or a strong attachment to outdoor living just in general, this can feel like a very cruel trade-off. So it's not every single year, I should mention, by every stretch, but it's still absolutely an element of living here to be aware of. The sixth negative is visible homelessness and property crime, particularly in major urban areas across Western Washington. So while violent crime rates here are generally lower than a lot of other large metropolitan regions across the United States, property crime is extremely common, especially in cities like Seattle, Bellingham, and the greater Olympia area. Unfortunately, car break-ins, package theft, and vandalism aren't occasional issues in these places. They're actually part of daily life in a lot of areas. Also, homeless encampments are highly visible in certain urban corridors, especially along the highways and in public parks and near transit hubs throughout Seattle, Tacoma, and Olympia especially. For families or for visitors or for people relocating from regions where this is a lot less visible, this can feel genuinely unsettling, especially when it's combined with open drug use that is often seen on public transit and definitely in downtown cores, especially in places like Seattle. The policies surrounding enforcement are, especially in Seattle, pretty lax, and the reality is that this issue is ongoing, and a lot of newcomers are just unprepared for how normalized this level of homelessness and drug visibility has become, which unfortunately can significantly affect their sense of safety and overall comfort. Totally understandably. That said, it's very important to be clear that this is not a uniform experience across all of Western Washington, because the state is actually incredibly location specific. For example, I live in Anacortes, Washington, and in nearly 15 years here, I have seen minimal homelessness and no visible open drug use. Similarly, many areas on the east side of the Puget Sound, including places like Bellevue, Mercer Island, Bothell, and Issaquah, experience far less of this day-to-day kind of visibility. So the key takeaway is not fear, it's awareness, and it's becoming educated on where you're moving to. This is a big enough factor that newcomers absolutely need to understand it, research carefully, and plan strategically if you think you might be living near visible encampments or higher property crime areas. The seventh negative is what some people refer to as Cascadia anxiety. It's the geological risks that come with living here. So Western Washington sits on top of the Cascadia subduction zone, which is where scientists agree that a massive earthquake is not a question of if, but when. It could be tomorrow or it could be in 100 years. We simply don't know. Add to that there are several active volcanoes, including Mount Rainier, which looms over huge population centers. And for some, the awareness can be a constant low-level stressor. For people prone to anxiety, living in a liquefaction zone or under a volcanic shadow can feel unsettling, even if the actual risk on any given day is low. The eighth negative is what I call the nature is full problem. So many people move here specifically for access to the amazing outdoors, the hiking, the parks, and all that recreation, only to discover that everyone else had the same idea. So popular trailheads and national parks are very crowded, especially on the weekends, and they almost assuredly require ultra early morning starts, like leaving your house at 3 a.m. I'm not kidding. Trust me on this. You almost always need to get permits in order to go hiking in a lot of parks. And in some parks, like Mount Rainier, for example, you even need to get reservations just to get in the summer high months. And the spontaneous, quote, let's go for a hike lifestyle is often replaced by careful planning and crowd management. For people that are looking for solitude in nature, this can feel a bit like a letdown. And I also want to point out that this is the same thing for ski hills. Winters in the mountains here are gorgeous, but especially on the weekends, everyone wants to be in them. So ski lift lines can be ultra long and the runs can be absolutely packed. on the flip side of this whole issue, the way around it is all in the timing. If you're willing to get up early, go hiking or skiing on weekdays, and you're willing to also explore and find some lesser known areas and hikes, of which there are many, you will absolutely find that the outdoors in Washington state offers some of the most spectacular scenery anywhere on the planet. The ninth negative, believe it or not, is actually the food scene, and this one is controversial, but it's frequently cited. So while Western Washington absolutely rocks it at certain cuisines, particularly Asian food, many transplants from major food cities find that the overall scene is overpriced and it's kind of underwhelming. Even in the cities, late night dining options are limited, kitchens close early, and finding consistently good Mexican food or barbecue can be quite frustrating. So for people who see food as a major part of their lifestyle and their social life, this can actually be surprisingly emotionally disappointing when you get here and experience it. But if Thai food or Chinese or Vietnamese are your favorite foods and you're a supreme coffee snob like me, I promise that you will find the right fit. The 10th and final negative, and this is a big one, is cultural and political polarization. So along the I-5 corridor, politics are heavily progressive. If you drive 45 minutes to the east or into more rural communities here, the culture becomes deeply conservative. There is usually very little middle ground here in Washington. Moderates or people that have more nuanced or unusual viewpoints can absolutely feel pressure to self-censor depending on where they live or work. And so this divide can feel exhausting for people who value open dialogue or ideological diversity. My advice is that if politics are very, very important to you and to your identity, please don't be afraid to do lots of research and have very frank and open discussions about the local communities with whoever is helping you search for a new home. Now, here's the part I promised at the very beginning. So with all of that laid out, you're probably asking yourself why anybody would choose to live in Washington at all, right? And the truth is Western Washington is not special because it's easy. It's special because the highs here are extraordinarily high. When the Mount Rainier as we call it, is out on a 75-degree day in July, and when the water is calm at sunset and the sky starts to turn pink and gold, or you step onto a ferry that's headed to Whidbey Island or the San Juan Islands or Vashon, and you feel the noise of the world slipping away, there are moments here that are truly unmatched anywhere else in North America. The deal breakers are the entrance fee, and for some people that price is just too high, totally understandably. But for others, it is worth every single trade-off. The key is knowing which one you are before you move. And if you're considering making that decision, our contact information is below, and we want to connect with you, so please reach out. Let's talk honestly, and let's make sure that Western Washington is the right fit for you. Also, go ahead and leave a comment below. What are other things that people should be aware of before moving to Washington State? And also, thank you so much for watching all the way through. And please remember to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. And if you liked this video of ours, check out the next one on your screen because we think that you're going to like that one too. So thank you again, keep exploring, and we will see you on the next video.